The Great Chinese Famine is one of the biggest disasters of modern history. But most people don't really know that much about it. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. The estimates of the number of people who died in this famine go from a low of 20 million to a high of 55 million. The sources I used, the primary sources I used for my research. Tombstone, Yan Yixing, he estimates 36 million. Mao's Great Famine by Frank Decatur, he estimates 45 million. To give you a perspective of these numbers, the entire state of Washington, population, 7.5 million. Take the biggest state, California, 39.5 million, estimated in 2017. To understand what happened, let's look at a snippet of Chinese history starting at the end of World War II. The Japanese left China and there was a power vacuum. There was a civil war for 4 years. The victors of that war, the Chinese Communist Party under Mao Zedong. They instituted the People's Republic of China in 1949. They thought their Marxist approach would bring quick prosperity to China. When this didn't happen, Mao Zedong decided that he wanted to take a more extreme form of Marxism. That's the next program, The Great Leap Forward. And if you notice the dates, 1958 to 1962, they correspond with the Great Famine. And that's not a coincidence. The Great Leap Forward was anything but. In 1962, more pragmatic leaders came to China. Mao's own power was diminished. Temporarily, as it turns out, during the Cultural Revolution. Mao regained total power and he kept it until he died in 1976. What was China like under Mao Zedong? It was a closed society similar to what North Korea is today. It's hard to imagine such a big country like China being closed off like North Korea. However, there was this great famine going on and people didn't know it. The Chinese communists ruled with an iron fist, a totalitarian regime, and by this I mean it's very hierarchical, different layers. If you were a leader at a certain level of the bureaucracy, you were responsible to the person who was above you because they could replace you for any reason whatsoever or for no reason. And you didn't have to worry that much about the people you supposedly served. Totally different leadership approach than what Toastmasters teaches. The economy worked pretty much the same way. It was a command economy. The communists, the state controlled the means of production. They would set production quotas. Groups would have to produce a certain amount. How did that lead to famine? Mao Zedong decided that he was going to take this approach called collectivizing agriculture. Members of his own party tried to warn him that that approach was taken in the Soviet Union in the 1920s. And it was a disaster. But Mao did not want to hear it. Those people in the Communist Party who tried to warn him, guess what happened? So they set up these, what they call people's communes. Farmers who had tilled plots of land, sometimes for generations, they were taken off of the land. They had to work land that they did not know, they were unfamiliar, they had to use farming techniques, tools that they weren't used to, and they had to work for people that didn't care about them. Do you think that production suffered? And yet, those members of the party who might be in charge of a commune, what do you think would happen if they told their superiors that they did not meet their production quota? What did they do? They lied. They said they meant it. They meant it. And the reports went upward through the bureaucracy. And Mao heard that China had met its production quota for grain. He was delighted. He said, we don't have to import grain anymore like we've done for decades. We could actually export it. And he procured grain from the communes, enough supposedly to feed the workers in the cities. Members of the Communist Party, well, they ate pretty well. Gave them an added incentive to do whatever they had to do to remain in the Communist Party. Who do you think suffered from the production shortfall? The farmers. The very people who grew the food. So what was life like on these people's communes? Disease was rampant. When you are malnourished, do you think your body's ability to fight disease is going to be compromised? Widespread violence. And not just between people fighting over limited food supplies. Those who were in charge of those communes, they had pretty free rein to beat and torture those workers that they felt were not being productive enough. Those who suffered the worst, the elderly, the women, the children. Of course, there was a lot of theft. People trying to steal limited food supplies. And they looked for alternate food supplies. And what do I mean by this? Things that you really wouldn't think of eating. The bark off of the trees, the grass off of the ground, the leather off of your shoes. And in its ultimate form, cannibalism. In Chinese culture, they respect the dead as much as anybody. They like to bury their family members and remember them, but extreme hunger will push you to these limits. The vast majority of the millions upon millions who died, they died of starvation. If you think about it, that is a very slow, painful method of death. You might say, like some people do, China's a huge country. They have 1 billion people there. So they lose 30 million, 40 million people. What is it? They're individuals. They're fathers, mothers, sons, daughters. If there is one thing that I got from my research, is that this man's legacy should be of someone whose stubborn and narrow-minded devotion to an ideology was the primary force for killing tens of millions of his countrymen. Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.